So he was in the Fox, but he was, and you thought it was. WandaVision has broken my brain.
Wanda, who is this?
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin review. We're talking today about WandaVision on Disney Plus. Yeah, they've episodes 4 and 5 have really kind of broken the mold and kind of broken my brain in trying to figure out what's going on with this show. So the last review we did episodes 1 through 3, which were all the period piece sitcom episodes. You knew there was a little something going on there. We then come to find out in episode 4 that there's actually stuff going on. We get to see outside of the WandaVision world and see what was happening while those episodes were going on from the perspective of S.W.O.R.D and the FBI. And you got Randall Park, who is reprising his role that he had in Ant-Man 2. Of course, you may know him as the dad from Fresh Off the Boat. He's one of the quirkiest Asian actors I've ever seen, and it works so well in the show. And he's teaming up with Darcy, who you may remember her from the first 2 Thor movies. Kind of one of the most annoying characters in the history of the MCU, but she was less annoying in this one, and her and Randall Park working together was actually pretty good. They had some really funny little quips with each other during the show that I enjoyed, but they were investigating this anomaly that's happening in this town that's supposed to be there, but it's not really there. They can't really get into it, and this is where S.W.O.R.D comes in. Now, S.W.O.R.D in WandaVision and in the MCU is not quite like the S.W.O.R.D in the comic books, which kind of dealt with space threats. It was kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. in space. Although from what I understand, the S.W.O.R.D wasn't as big a deal in the comic books as it's being made out to be on the show, but it's kind of taken place since they scuttled S.H.I.E.L.D., what was it, like 6 years ago now when they got rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. Ironically enough, the same year that they started a show called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then they removed. That's always going to make me laugh. But S.W.O.R.D is now dealing with more sentient things, and we get to see what happened after the snap and after everybody came back from the snap, or the blip as they call it within the MCU universe. We pick up with Monica Rambeau. She, of course, is the daughter from the Captain Marvel movie, and we see where things have gone with that character because we haven't picked up on that when Captain Marvel came back for the not the Infinity War, but for Endgame. We didn't know what happened to this young girl, and it's, we've known for a while that we're going to see her older, and now we're getting to finally see that. We see her re-materializing after the snap, after being dusted. She's in the hospital, and there's people going crazy, and she doesn't know that she's been gone for 5 years, and unfortunately her mother passed away of cancer during that time frame. Last thing she remembers, she was waiting by her mother's bedside to get some test results or results from a surgery, and you wake up, and that's kind of a mind trip. You were like, for her it was like a second or whatever, and then you wake up and your mom's dead, and you find out you've been gone for 5 years, and all this crazy stuff happened, and aliens invaded and kind of took over. No, that didn't take over the world, deleted half of the world's population. So that was strange. That was a very, very strange occurrence. I mean, that's got to be a mind job whatsoever. So she gets back to S.W.O.R.D, which we then find out her mother was actually in charge of. She was the Nick Fury of S.W.O.R.D. This has now been handed over to Tyler Haywood, who is, even admits that Monica Rambeau probably should have had the spot, but he's, basically acting director right now of S.W.O.R.D. He explains that they're not really doing space research anymore, but they're doing more sentient life stuff, which, is involving something like Vision. Now, where this becomes a little bit interesting with the Easter eggs is because we all know that the Fantastic Four are coming to the MCU eventually, and if you know anything about their history from any of the crappy movies that have already been out, or from their comic book lore, or from some of the cartoons or whatever, you know that the Fantastic Four became the Fantastic Four because they were astronauts out in space and got hit by some radiation, except for the movie they came out with a couple years ago, which completely screwed that whole thing up. But we're going to forget about that movie and just focus on how this is probably going to tie into the MCU. We're already seeing them kind of lay the foundation on how they're going to introduce the Fantastic Four into this show, and it's probably going to be through S.W.O.R.D, them being S.W.O.R.D agents. Haywood does say that a lot of their astronauts were gone in the blip, and some of them had quit over time, so I think that's kind of the setup for how they're going to start the Fantastic Four. That's not the only Fox Marvel property that's been ported over to the MCU that we got some nods to. Of course, WandaVision in itself is kind of a nod to the House of M comic book storyline, and part of that was, as I've covered before, Wanda saying in the moment everybody's waiting for, no more mutants, but in the MCU, we're kind of speculating that she's going to bring in mutants. However, she may have already done that. We're in the 80s now. I love the montage, the complete, Family Ties introductory montage that they did at the beginning of this whole thing with the sketch and the painting and the colors coming to life and the baby pictures of Vision, which it's just great. That was great. Again, a lot of funny little lines and little quirks here. That Marvel humor is definitely present in here. But we're in the 80s, and we got some issues going on. Vision, after the episode 3, started questioning things, questions them a lot more in episode 4. Their twins are just aging themselves up at will. If they, we got a puppy, and we're not old enough to have the puppy, so let's age ourselves up so now we're old enough. And Wanda apparently doesn't have control of them, which is a good thing to note here. We got Tommy and I think Bobby, I think his name is. Tommy and Bobby are the names of the twins. And apparently that they become, in the comic books, they grow up to become actual the new Avengers or the young Avengers, I believe. But as far as the MCU is concerned, right now they're presented as figments of Wanda's imagination, like everything else inside of WandaVision, the WandaVision Hex, or the Hex as Darcy calls it. Sorry, Darcy. But again, they seem to be able to control themselves, and from what we're learning about how they're explaining the actual physics of all of this stuff with Wanda's little hex barrier that she's created, anything that comes out of there is going to be manifested in real life. Monica Rambeau, when she got booted out of there at the end of episode 3, we see in episode 4 and 5 that she's got that outfit, that costume that she wore while she was in Wanda's world, but it was made out of the Kevlar vest that she had already worn going into it, just reformatted. She puts it up on the locker, shoots at it, and goes, yeah, see, it's made of the material that I went in with it. The question is, because we kind of know that the twins are going to get out of there. We already saw in the preview for the trailer for episode 6 that Vision gets out. That's going to be kind of scary. But the twins were created within Wanda's vision, so there is no material that they were made from. I think they're probably going to keep with that comic book lore that when they get out of this, that they're actually just going to exist as if they were real people. And then, boy, do they go back to being babies? I'm assuming they're going to be full-grown adults at that time, so they can be in the Young Avengers or the West Coast Avengers or whatever version of the Avengers they're going to put them in the MCU. I did get a little emotional, though, with Vision stuff, because Vision knows that something is wrong here, and he doesn't know he's really dead. And she's reanimated him, and she's trying to hide it from him. And it leads to an argument with them where that shot where they're both kind of floating up in the air with the superhero, the one knee up. I always wonder why they did that. Why does the one knee have to be up? Is that lifting them? I don't know. They had the argument, and I think Vision's we see the Vision's going to try to get out when they get to the 90s in the next episode. And that's probably going to be very painful for him, because if he leaves Wanda's vision, the real him dead. And which brings a kind of creepy vibe to this whole thing. So think about this. Vision, we saw this in one of the earlier episodes, in the 60s episode, where Wanda got the vision that Vision was, the corpse with the big hole in his head from where Thanos plucked out the Mind Stone. So that's what's actually going on. We learned is that within this space that Wanda is manipulating everything and everybody within it to kind of alter the reality. But in reality, she's carrying around his Vision's dead corpse, which is kind of creepy, even though it's, he's a machine, but, he was a sentient creature, and she's carrying around this corpse and animating it and sleeping with it. This is kind of gross, y'all. Meanwhile, S.W.O.R.D is trying to get in. They're doing all this stuff. Darcy figures out that it's a TV signal that's coming out of this hex. She gets them to watch the show. Then her and Randall Park get all into the actual sitcom, because they would. But this leads to Hayward saying, "Hey, we got to go in here and stop this stuff." They send more drones in. We start seeing now all of those weird incidents that happened in episode 1 through 3, what was causing it by the FBI agent Randall Park trying to communicate with her, by them sending a drone in and all this other stuff. They sent another drone in episode 5, and Monica's trying to talk Wanda down off the ledge a little bit and like, look, you need to stop this. You're hurting these people. Vision found out that they're hurting people when he connected with a guy at his job and found out what's really going on, that it's Wanda that's doing all of this. And then Hayward decides to open fire on Wanda, which was not a smart idea. She comes out of the thing. Everybody noticed that her accent came back. Her accent, which actually has been missing for a couple movies after Age of Ultron, but her Sokovian accent is back, and she is very evil. She's very mad. I can't do a Sokovian. I don't even know if that is really a Sokovian accent. I can't do her. It sounds like Russian to me. I can't do her accent. But she comes out. She's really ticked off, and kind of a nod to her father Magneto in an alternate dimension, played by Ian McKellen in the very first X-Men movie, turns the guns that the agents have, the Homo sapiens, the Muggles, well, that's a different franchise, but turns the guns on him the same way Magneto turned the guns on the agents in the first X-Men movie. And of course, if you know anything about comic book lore, Scarlet Witch in the comic books is the daughter of Magneto. Then there's a crazy whole part at the end where we get Wanda after her and Vision kind of had their fight. We then see she brings somebody to the door, although actually she didn't bring them to the door. And she opens the door, and Darcy's watching this on the TV screen, and she's shocked that Wanda has recast her brother Pietro. And it's not Aaron Taylor Johnson, the actor playing Pietro, who is also known as Quicksilver from the comics. It's Evan Peters, who played Quicksilver, who's the same character, but in the X-Men Fox universe. And they're both Quicksilver from the comic universe, but she's recast him because apparently Wanda can't bring back people from the dead. She can animate Vision's corpse, but she couldn't bring her actual brother back from the dead. So it seems like she kind of reached in from a different reality and brought in the Evan Peters version of her brother, and is kind of stunned when he's not acting quite the same way. It is to be noted that Evan Peters is not playing this version of Pietro or Peter or Quicksilver as, Aaron Taylor Johnson. That's not like they put a new face on the same character. He doesn't have an accent. He's got kind of like a northeastern accent. He's also not playing it quite like the character we saw in the Fox movies. He's playing it as a different character. Some people are suspecting that this may be Mephisto playing as and representing himself as Pietro or some other character, or maybe somebody else is making her think this. But again, this is why I'm talking about this. The show's starting to mess with your head a little bit, because you're trying to figure out what is reality now, because now they have officially merged the Fox X-Men universe into the MCU. And is this how the rest of the mutants come in, or does some crazier event happening at the end of this series bring the X-Men and mutants into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? It's a very clever way to do it. It's very meta, and it's really for the fans who really know all this stuff. But you don't really need to know this in order to enjoy the show. But I think most people know that there were two Quicksilvers, and that there's a different actor playing them for different franchises. I love this little twist that they did on it. It was shocking, to say the least. I did not think they were going to do that, but again, it's clever. And as we've seen with the rest of this WandaVision series, they're running with it. They're setting up the stuff now for Fantastic Four, X-Men. Is all getting set up already here in the first couple episodes of WandaVision. I can only imagine how crazier this is going to get towards the end. Plus, there's supposed to be some big cameo surprise at the end of WandaVision. Who that's going to be, I don't know, but there's a lot of questions to be answered. Now, of course, I'm going to be doing a review of the next episode, episode 6, that's coming up this weekend. I'll see how much more we learn in that episode, and then try to go on and try to point out some more Easter eggs and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff crammed into this show. It does take some rewatching, and I'm sure when I go back and rewatch this, now after I know what happens, it's going to have a totally different context on a second watch through. So, but the WandaVision, I enjoyed the first couple of sitcom episodes because I love those things. Some people didn't, but even now the people didn't like those first 3 episodes. Episodes 4 and 5 have definitely grabbed everybody's attention, and it just shows sometimes you got to be a little bit patient patience will pay off. You'll get some good stuff in the end. But I want to know what you guys think of WandaVision. What do you think about the big surprise? What do you think about how they're merging the Fox Marvel Universe now into the MCU? Do you think the Fantastic Four are going to come out of S.W.O.R.D? What do you think is going to happen when Vision leaves the Hex? How big is this thing going to get because they say it's expanding? There's a lot of questions, a lot of craziness. I'm loving this show so far, but I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until then, hit the like button and the subscribe button. Definitely share this video on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you talk about the MCU and WandaVision. And I will see you guys pretty soon for another review of WandaVision on Disney Plus here on the Rantin Review. Have a good day.